Good afternoon. Continuing on the concept of Tzimtzum, I just wanted to mention one thing that refers back to our last class, in which the Biyam Darkecha explained at length that the practical application of the concept of Tzimtzum is that just as Hashem created the world initially by hiding his manifest presence in order that existence can then find Hashem even within the hiddenness. He mentioned that throughout our lives, we go through periods of time in which we find ourselves feeling dark. We find ourselves being uninspired. And the concept is to keep in mind that that's part of God's plan. God created the world, that we're not always going to be so inspired and lit up by his existence. And it's our task to push our way through that darkness in order to find him. And that's what we discussed in our previous shiur. The point I want to mention now is something he doesn't say explicitly, but this is extremely important and a very fundamental concept in Kabbalistic study. And this is one of the reasons why I appreciate this particular commentary of Biyam Darkecha. And that's as follows. When we study these Kabbalistic concepts, whether it's about how God created the world, or whether it's certain, we'll call them Kabbalistic mechanisms that exist today, there's one very important thing to keep in mind. If we are taught these ideas, that means that they have a very practical application in our lives. These are not just mere theoretical concepts or interesting spiritual ideas or historical concepts, but every single one of them, no matter how esoteric and distant it might sound, has a practical application in our life. Because all of the writings of the Arizal, all of the writings of the Kabbalah are metaphors, but they're metaphors for how we are meant to be leading our lives. And we can't just live in the world of that metaphor, but we need to learn how to bring it down into practical application of how we live our lives. So as I said again, that is one of the things that I really love about this particular commentary, how he brings that down and shows us how to take a concept like Tzimtzum and to understand that it has a practical application, because that's why so often in our lives we find ourselves uninspired, pushing through the darkness, because that's how God created the world. As we continue now, he discusses the creation of the void. So Rav Chaim Vital writes that after the Tzimtzum, after the constriction, which again we have defined time and again as not being a real constriction, but a perceptual constriction, after the constriction, there remained a void amongst them, meaning that inasmuch as God hid his light, and as we discussed last week, as if he pushed it to the sides, by doing so, he created a brand new place. I'll define the word place in a few minutes, within which those who exist in that place do not experience God's existence. And this place is referred to in Kabbalah as a void. It's a void because it's a place that someone who is within it does not experience the fact that all is godliness, but rather it seems to those of us who are within this space that it is devoid of God's infinite light. And again, that's the word halal. Halal means a void or a vacuum. And within this place, the creations have the ability to feel as if they have their own independent existence. That is, that being in this place where God's manifest presence is hidden. So we don't find ourselves being drawn or being subsumed within God's infinite self. And even so, within this void, we do have the ability to receive his light and to find him. Because within this void, God hid himself and created a reality that someone who is found in the void will not see the power of God's existence, which incorporates everything. And through this, those of us who are found within can feel ourselves as having an independent existence that does have the ability to receive from God. And in a footnote, he mentions that we discuss concepts such as a void or a space, a place. We have to remember we are not talking about physical places and spaces. Rather, we are referring to spiritual entities that are above our concept. But the idea is that within, and again, within doesn't mean literally, we're not talking about geometry or geography here, but within the existence of God's infinite light, God created a lower form of existence within which we do not experience easily God's infinite light. And every level that we refer to as a place is really referring to different levels that God created of different possibilities of experience God. Okay, we're going to stop here, and in Mitzvah Shem, we will continue to discuss these concepts in our next class. Thank you very much for listening.